Hi folks, those of you that watched my review of the Aucision Tate set might remember that one of the issues I discussed was the design of the pantographs and the way that they latch when they are lowered. It's a little bit fiddly to release them, and it can actually be quite difficult to lower them and fix them in the lowered position. And over time the little tabs that hold it in place can become a bit bent, and it can be actually really hard to keep the pantograph down. So I've come up with a little fix to be able to easily raise and lower these pantographs by hand, which I think really improves the functionality of the models and makes it easier to do more realistic types of operation. So what I did was bought a bunch of these tiny 2x3mm magnets off eBay, and I've painted them black so that they look better once they're installed. And I've come up with two different ways of using these to hold the pantograph down. I worked out one way for the Tate cars, which is extremely simple and easy to do. However, that didn't work with the L class, which have a different design of pantograph, so I had to come up with a different technique for that. But I'll show you both of these techniques, and I'm sure one or the other will work on Aucision's other products, being their various New South Wales electric products as well. So I'm going to use an unpainted one here just to make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. You can see I'm moving it into position right in the middle of the base of the pantograph there, and it sticks to that little mounting screw. And that's pretty much all you have to do right there. That little metal bar just under the conductor sticks onto the top of the magnet. I haven't had to glue it in place or anything like that. It literally just sits right there, and I've been running my Tate set around for a while with these installed now, and hasn't fallen off or anything like that. So that is a really easy solution. Here's the black painted one, which is actually missing a bit of black paint now. Going on, just as a demonstration, you might notice that I'm using a wooden skewer to manipulate the magnet around. This is obviously really important because if you try and use metal tools, it will keep sticking to them and be really hard to position. So there you go, by hand you can just simply raise and lower the pantograph now, and it sits there quite happily. I did find that one of my Tate cars, that mounting screw was slightly lower down than on the other one. Now you could obviously open the car up and adjust the height of that, but that would be really annoying. I managed to solve the problem just by sticking a tiny piece of metal under the magnet to raise its height by a fraction of a millimetre, and that was actually enough to solve that problem. Now with the L-class pantograph I couldn't do that exact same thing because the pantograph has two separate conductors, meaning that that mounting screw sits in between them. The other thing I found was that these conductors are actually made of aluminium, I think, so the magnet doesn't even stick to them. So I had to come up with a slightly different solution here. Now you can see at the edges of the pantograph there's these tiny metal tabs, and that's what in the original design holds the pantograph down. You can see here I'm going to twist it to get it up. So as I say, that this the top part of the pantograph is not magnetic, so I had to do something to make it stick to the magnets. You can see these tiny tabs on either side. I was able to get a tiny piece of steel and glue it to those little tabs, just balanced on the end of my finger there. And that gave me a little point for the magnets to attach to. Now you may find you'll need the wooden skewer to carefully separate that from your finger because, you know, it's not real modelling if you haven't glued the model to your finger, right? So once you've separated that, you've got a little magnetic contact there. And then these tabs at the base I found were almost the right height already to hold one of those little magnets underneath. So I will bend it up very slightly, not too much because I still want it to apply a bit of downward pressure to hold the magnet in place. And then just using a pair of pliers, I'm just going to slide that magnet in under there, and again, no glue or anything required, it just sits there. And it's easy enough to adjust, and it's easy to remove if you change your mind about this modification. So just using that skewer to hold it in place. So then you need to do the same thing on the other side of the pantograph, and of course the L class has two pantographs, so again both sides of the other pantograph. And then once you're sure that the glue has dried on those little pieces of steel, you'll find that if you just manually push the pantograph down, it will stick to those magnets, and job done. So being able to lower the pantographs is great for, when you stable your train and you want it to look like it's properly stabled. It's also good for doing spark transfers or recreating this 1980s railfan tour with a South Australian 930 pulling the Tate set. So yeah, really easy little fix. If you find that that single magnet modification for the Tate cars isn't enough to hold them down, you could very well do the same thing I did with the L-Class to a Tate car. It's still got those same tabs. So that may actually be a better long-term solution if you feel like doing it that way. Now obviously the magnets do disappear quite a bit when you paint them black. They still look a little bit odd if you look closely, but to be honest I'm not too worried about that because this base area of the pantograph is not actually modelled super accurately anyway. Particularly on the Tates, they haven't even blackened those springs, so it's really a functional part of the model and it's not 100% accurate in the first place, so I really don't feel that this compromises the integrity of the model at all. So I hope you found this useful, and if you have any questions about what I'm doing in the video, please let me know, and if you've got any better suggestions on how to do this, also love to hear them. Thanks very much for watching.